Hi guys, my name is Prasanna Charji. I'm from Alien Brains, and today's video is on the topic of immutable state in React. Now, you must have definitely heard and must have read in the React docs, and it's written in bold to never mutate the state directly, or that it's always use set state to mutate the state. So you must have been thinking, or you must have ever thought that why should we make the state immutable? So the you must have mutated this the state directly. You have mutated the state, then did stay set state, or you must have mutated the state and then use this dot force update, and your app must have worked completely fine. So let's look into the problems that are in mutating the state. So problem number one is detecting changes. So as we know that states are very much similar to objects. So in objects, when there is a mutated object, it becomes very much difficult to determine where that object is changed, to detect where that object is changed. So what we have to do in mutable objects, that we have to take a previous copy of that object, and we have to compare and see every node, and we have to traverse every node of that object tree to determine where it is changed. So in case of immutable object, it is much easier to determine where that change has taken place. And second problem with mutating state is determining when to re-render in React. So the benefit of immutability is that it helps to build pure components in React. So what pure component is, that whenever a single prop is changed, that component renders then only, or it doesn't renders. So it's what we can call an optional render. Whenever uh, there is an change in prop, or there is a state is updated, then only we re-render in component, or we don't, or else we don't. So we don't have to always re-render the component inside a React app whenever there is a simple set state. So this is what helps in when we make this state immutable. If we make it mutable, then whenever we update any state, it will re-render the complete app and every element and every component in the app. To look into this problem more clearly, I will demonstrate an example using to-do app. So I have created a to-do app, not exactly to-do app. I have created an list basically. So what this application does is it adds it does two functions. It has three buttons basically. One that adds item immutably, which is definitely the better way, and one item that is that add items mutably, that is the bad way to mutate, which is very bad to mutate state directly, and one button that simply clears that list. So what I've done, I've taken a state elements, and add mutably item immutably, I have just simply used prop spreading, and I have spread this state and added a random number. Whereas in add item mutably, what I have done is I have see, this step is the mutable one, so I have simply pushing the state dot element, and this step is the one that mutates the state. And I have console logging the state, the elements array here, so you would see why this is required, and then I'm calling set state. And clear state, clear list, you know what it does. It simply empties the element array, and I am rendering a list here. The list takes the prop elements, which is this state elements, that is the list of array of items. So let's look into this list. So what is this list is basically list is, so there's a list, and it basically maps the received prop and shows this, and the received array is basically random numbers that are generated using map.random. So let's see how this app runs. So here's an app. There, as have seen there are the three buttons: add item immutably, add item mutably, and there's a clear button, and there's the list. The list currently is empty. Now when I am, you are simply the good way of where the state is immutable, and the proper way of adding to the list is, let's see what happens. So it simply adds the random number with its index, so we can add multiple numbers and it works completely fine. Now, okay, so before adding item mutably, what the thing that I forgot to mention is in list. What I've done, rather than using React.component, I have used React.pureComponents. So what React.pureComponent does is it makes the performance of the app much more better, and what it does is it only re-renders when its props changes, or instead of re-rendering every time it's the parent that app.js re-renders, it doesn't re-renders every time the app re-renders. So this is similar to using component data update and checking the previous prop to the current prop and then updating the state. It is similar to that, and instead of using component data update, we can directly use React.pureComponent to make this skip the render and save some time in our application. So this is a key point in making this to-do list and saving up time, and that's what the users, whenever someone is using the app, would want in your application is they would want snappier and faster applications to use. So let's look what happens when I add item immutably. So as you can see, nothing gets added to the list, and whereas we are getting the console state. The state is updating, but we are not getting any list item added to the list. So let's try again and again. So we can see that the state is getting updated. Clearly the state is getting updated, but nothing is getting added to the list. So, and the other thing is, if I simply click on add item immutably, good, I get the previous three item that were added immutably and the next item that was added mutably. So what this so clearly we can see the difference between add item immutably and add item mutably. So this happens is as list is a pure component, and because pushing an item new item in this the state dot element array does not replace the underlying array, so it is mutating the array rather than replacing it. And whenever that and this list doesn't get re-rendered as the state is mutating directly. So this is a great example to see how mutating state is the wrong way, as we can see, and using the immutable using the power of immutability in state is the right way to create any application. Okay. Now the next part is, okay, we have already created we have already seen how this we can make a state immutable, and how we can what's the difference between mutable and immutable state. So let's now look into the ways that we can make state immutable. Okay, so to make this to show this example, I have added a form, created a simple form. Okay, and let me comment this out, so we won't be needing this right now, this functions. Okay, so I have removed this. Okay, let's remove the constructor as well. Okay. Let's look into the form. So what the form is. Okay, so the form is basically there are 3 input boxes and a button to submit the form, and the 3 input boxes are basically where we can enter the name, phone number and email ID of a user. So a simple form where we take the 3 parameters of a user. So I have added a state called user and taken 3 parameters of the user, name, phone and email. So most of the cases you must have seen that for every on change of an input, we have to create different handle change functions to for different input boxes. So what we can do is create a single uh, function to handle all the input boxes. So this is so here I've created an example of this single handle change with state mutation. So this one is where the state getting mutated. So what I've done is, even a target.name, I have spreaded this, I have restructured this event target, and I've taken the name and the value. So what the name does is, basically, if I've provided the input name as name, so it will take that name, and the value, as you know, that the value that we entered in this input box. And so what I've done is that I've copying this is now let's see. Now this step is not actually copying, this is rather creating a reference of this.state.user. So, and as this is creating a reference and not a copy, doing this step, user name equal to value, this mutates the state. And here's the problem that occurs, and this is the case where that we should not do, and this is mutating the state. Now the alternative of doing this, there are three alternatives of doing this. Let's look into this. The three alternatives of for handling this is handling state in React is object.assign, object.spread, and with immutability helper. So let's look first into how we can handle this with object.assign. Okay, so object.assign. So what object.assign does is, so object assign is, as been seen in this handle change with state mutation. This step creates an reference and not a copy. To create a copy of this object, we can use object.assign. And what object.assign does is it creates a new object, a blank object, and copies the data of this state.user onto it. So basically, we get a new user, completely new object called user here, and this is not a reference. So if we simply add this user name, so basically if whenever this parameter, so name can be name or phone or email, so that value gets added, and we simply can see that, and then we can set state, and this is the way we can handle immutable state, and the proper way of handling immutable state. Now let's look into the second way of handling immutable state is using prop spreading. So as you've seen in the example of to-do app, in the not to-do app, in the list of how that as you've seen the example of the list, and how pure component re-renders the immutable objects and doesn't renders the mutable object, that part. So I have used prop spreading to change to mutate the not mutate, to change the state, to update the state, keeping the state immutable. So what this does is this spreads the previous users, the user data, and then adds onto the new values, and then it simply set states the user data. And the last way of changing this state immutably is using immutability helper. Now immutability helper, this is the one that is mentioned into the docs, in the React doc, that library we can use to mutate the state, not mutate the state, make the state immutable and update the state properly. So let's look what this does is, it has an immutable helper, gives out a function called update. So what update does, it takes this state, and what it does, it merges this received target and this target or name, that is basically either name or phone number or email, and the value that is passed on to it, and then this set states. So what I've done is, on change I have added this for name, I've added handle change with immutability helper, handle change with object assign, and handle change with object spreading. And let's as you can see, this the three parameters, the three input boxes: enter name, enter phone number, and enter email ID. So what I can do is enter the name. Let's say my name is Prasan, so I can add Prasan, and as you can see, that we are getting this updated as we are console log onto this form, and this help on this handle change with immutability helper, and use it on to the enter name. It is simply updating the user. Okay, now let's use this handle change with object assign and see if it works or not. So if I, yeah, it definitely works, right? So as you can see that it change the state is getting updated. So yeah, you can see, right, that it is just updating this part and not all the parts, right? And email ID, this simply directly adds the email ID, right? And right. Okay, so I think you understand the part of what I'm trying to say is we can use this three different ways of the ways to handle immutable state. Okay. Thank you for watching the video.